Welcome back, pop culture nerds. Today we're actually talking about a film that is technically very spooky, but it's also November because Joe and I got a little behind this year on talking about the creepy content.
You snuck in one zombie thing in time for spooky season. So this is a happy post-spooky season. It's like a New Year's Eve equivalent of Halloween going on right now. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, while you're feasting on a turkey leg, why not think about somebody feasting on somebody else? I mean, that gets me hungry. I don't know about you, Joe.
Yeah, leg for a leg. Who's really paying attention here? Anything goes.
Well, tell you what. Every now and again, we get to bring some friends along with us here on this little pop culture journey of ours. As Joe and I remember the days when we were a little bit younger and had a little, well, in my case, had a little more hair. Joe still has a very, very lavish set of follicles over there. But we're bringing a friend along with us. And folks, this is a connection that I am very happy to have made. I consider him a friend, but he's a streamer. He's a variety streamer on top of that, plays a lot of fun games. He goes by the DailyDad. But he also goes by Nick, or if it's me, I call him Kevin for some reason. Welcome, Nick, to the show. How are you doing?
Great, man. I could not be more honored to be a guest on the show. I know this has been a long time coming for me and working as a firefighter every third day schedule. Got a family, the wife, kids. I know you guys get it, but I couldn't be more excited to be here. Truly.
Yeah, dude,
we're excited to have you because we are wading into an area of cinema that is usually pretty treacherous waters, and that is a video game adaptation. So, yeah, we are happy to have you along for this ride.
Yeah, no, and this one is one of my favorite video game franchises, and I couldn't have been more hyped up for when this movie was coming out.
It's crazy to think that it's been over 20 years since the first Resident Evil hit theaters, and when it came out, this was still one of those uncharted areas of pop culture where video game movie gonna be a giant turd, it was just the expectation. But you know what, hey Nick, since you're a guest, what was your experience like? I guess the hype and what you were thinking about Resident Evil going in.
Okay, so obviously coming from the games, you're thinking Claire, you're thinking Wesker, you're thinking Umbrella, you're thinking everyone's going to be in this movie. And that's kind of not how it went. When that first scene pops up and you're like, what? And as the movie progresses, you're like, I mean, it's Resident Evil-y, and I like me some Resident Evil, so, oh man, when I go to the movies, I'm all there for the cinematic adventure. I don't have a preemptive, I don't really watch a ton of previews. I know the movie's coming out. I see a preview, fantastic. I remember that. But I remember being super young because young Nick would have only been 20. And 20-year-old Nick was all about video games, and I had friends that played video games, and we were all super pumped. We had all played Resident Evil. I mean, super hyped up for this. And it was, if you talk to other people that played this game, they were all excited for this movie. It didn't matter what had happened to all the turd game movie adaptations. This was supposed to be the one that saved us all.
Yeah. It reminded me of how when the Final Fantasy movie came out.
Yes.
And how everybody was expecting the same thing you just mentioned, all these characters, all these recognizable things, and then they're like, "Wait a second, what is this? We're not going to do."
That's a full stop.
That record scratch that was in every '80s movie trailer. It was like, nope, nope, we're not doing that. Nope.
Yes.
So, yeah, I remember that too. I remember the concept of Resident Evil. I remember being scared shitless by the first few games, especially I think it was either 2 or 3, you're going through the cop station and that massive creature just runs by the window.
Yes, 2, yeah.
2. That was the kind of stuff that I was expecting going into it, and I don't know, we're going to get into this a little bit, but I feel like through the years, this movie has definitely had a journey of its own, right?
Yes.
And Joe, feel free to correct me here, but I feel like at first people were incredibly hard on this movie. So I don't know, Joe, what do you think?
They were, and a fun feature that you can actually do with this movie is if you actually turn the volume all the way down and just watch the movie with its gritty lighting and early 2000s just feel, you'll actually just hear Evanescence Bring Me to Life just playing if you turn everything else down. It just fits that well into the United States' pop culture at that time. But all in all, like, yeah, I think people were too hard on it, but at the same time, like, decided, like, deservedly so in a little bit. Now, this is not me saying, like, I didn't hate the movie. I like the movie now. I liked the movie then. But I think it almost tried doing something to try and remedy the fact that it's a video game adaptation, and usually 9 times out of 10 those are giant turds. So it's like I think the goal was, we'll take elements of the game that the people who played the game will recognize and enjoy, but then we'll just try and make a zombie movie out of it that people who've never played the game can come and hopefully enjoy. So they didn't rely too heavy on the source material. And so, like, that's like what Nick said, like, you go in expecting to see certain things and you don't really get them. And then you get like little like Easter eggs or little things just dangling, and little carrots dangling in front of you, like in certain parts of the movie, to really let you know that there's something going on from the video game world that could happen in the next movie. And I think later in the franchise, they do really, like, lean more into the video game, like, aspect of the source material. But here, I think you kind of, because of that, like, trying to have a foot in both worlds of just a good zombie movie and a video game movie, you ended up pleasing no one in the process. So I think that's why people were so difficult or so hard on this movie.
I love how you use the word hard, because I always referred to first seeing this movie as like the anti-Viagra. Like if I was like full, like, full mast, like sailing into a storm, it's like, nope, the wind is out of those sails. I think we're gonna have to move on. But the thing was, though, what I found interesting about this was how they went to like the king, George A. Romero himself, and rejected a treatment from him to like create a Resident Evil idea. And instead, this German studio, Constantine Films, that I think absolutely nobody will recognize when you see the logo pop up. You're like, who the fuck are these people?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
like,
the Germans.
Is this person?
Yeah.
He's making these movies.
Yeah. Is this too with a ball? I love
Well, I
with a
think
ball.
if Romero would have got his hands on it, it would have been darker. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, because that's his stuff. He, obviously play and, he dabbles in a little bit of everything, but like his overall theme, Romero's, were all darker tones, more adult level. And I think when you think of Resident Evil, you think dreary. This is like, there's no way out. You're not getting out. You are the 0.01% chance of maybe getting out of this story alive. And Romero, I mean, on all his movies, he hits that bullseye every time. And like you said, it's not how this panned out, even though like throughout the movie, the team and everything like that. And obviously we'll get into all that stuff, but there was no feel of like desperation, or it wasn't, or maybe grittiness out of the movie.
Yeah. I get that vibe. Yeah. Sorry, Joe, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, because like any time that you may get some sort of like bleakness to the plot over, like if a character goes down or it looks like they're not going to make it out, you will get some sort of like supernatural element out of the lead in this, and she'll do something that's just very early 2000s action cinema, and it pulls you right out of that desperate scenario.
Yes.
And I think, like, to the point like Nick was making with how dark Romero usually got with his movies, is on top of just like the actual grittiness of the horror, was actually like what he would comment on society at the time was usually kind of the bleakest bit, is that like when you got to the end of the world and you had zombies everywhere and they're eating humans, the worst part about a Romero movie usually is still the humans.
Yes.
And how they're treating each other and even the zombies. And that is something that's gone in this movie. It's just the straight fear of the zombies themselves, plus a little action movie punch going on.
Which to me, I think, is the Paul W.S. Anderson effect because what we've got going on here, as you've both pointed out, is that we've got a little less Romero and a little more of this, like, I want to say like a Toyota commercial where things are looking sleek and everything, right? But at the same time, I don't want to buy a Toyota, right?
Even
like,
though it's Toyota-thon?
It doesn't matter, Joe. I don't care about the deals.
Tis the season. Come on. Jan's out here having a great sale going on.
Buy. You're losing money by not buying it.
Which, by the way,
not all
not
our
a
trucks
sponsor.
are sexy. Just come on down.
Well, here's what we'll do real quick, because this season we've been doing something a little bit different than our movie reviews of the previous season of this program. What we've been doing is looking back at what people have said about these films before we start talking about what we want to say.
Love it.
Yeah, we're gonna dig in. I've got some good ones here. So this is gonna be on the lower end of the spectrum, the noticeably flaccid side, and this is a relatively
6 p.m. Here we go.
Yeah, right. Yeah, this is not a good one, guys. So this is definitely the rotten side of it, though. Despite a promising setup, the picture never really goes anywhere, instead immersing viewers in a kinetic onslaught of flesh, namely that of Mila Jovovich, and flesh eaters most of the rest of the cast. So, I gotta say, guys, I kind of feel like that's not too far off of some of the things I've even said about this movie.
No, and like I said, my wife and I were watching it, and she goes, it must be cold in that office.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah.
Or you get towards the end of the film and she's like on that operating table pulling like the IVs and stuff out.
Yes.
And she's in some sort of weird like
paper robe.
sandwich robe.
Yes.
And it just leaves the side here. And I am pretty sure that they had to like do some after like editing shading to make sure we didn't see anything.
Yeah.
'Cause,
Yeah,
like,
it wasn't quite tactical, you know.
It was like a dentist bib, but like, you know, like a Costco version, right? We just had like we got 3 of these things. Let's just put them on her and see what happens. Yeah. Which I kind of feel horrible for her because it feels like she had to have been naked for at least several hours of filming this movie, but you know, that's what happens, right? On the other side of the spectrum, though, we have a slightly better review here, which is, it is not a disappointing turnout for a video game film, but one does see how it could have been better. And once again, I am also feeling like if there's a Venn diagram, I'm right in the middle.
Yeah. No, I'm with you too. I'm with you too, because if you think about it, like coming from video games so heavily into the movie, it wasn't this, like, I remember specifically, it was not a great disappointment to me. It was definitely had some W's. What could it have been better? I guess I would side more with that second review than I would the first one. It wasn't this great disappointment to me. It was different, right? And like we just said a few moments ago, the adaptations from video games to movies were awful. This was not awful, and it's still, to me, not awful. Even watching it almost 20 years later. Or 20 plus years later.
Yeah, and clearly, like, even though like it definitely had some harsh criticism, financially it still did well. This was had a budget of like 33 million against a profit that made 103. So that's pretty good. That's filmmaking 101, baby.
Yeah,
right
that's
there.
a W.
Yep.
And to be honest with you, it also sits in that spot that I feel like a lot of this subject matter, for whether it's video games or even zombie just content in general, critics are at 35% and the audiences are at 67%. So clearly the tight asses are doing what they do, and the fans are like, yep, we're here to have fun. We're not here to sniff our own farts. So clearly,
I think a lot of people forget about that. Like, they're supposed to be cinematic adventures. You're supposed to be, a part of this movie or of this, world. And critics they get so butthurt about the littlest things, when if you really just pull back and like, I do more of it now that I'm older, and the fact that I'm just trying to enjoy the movie. Like, there are some movies that I've sat and watched, being the dad of a 12 and 10-year-old, I mean, Frozen was huge. And I enjoyed Frozen. Like, I didn't care that it was a kiddie movie, but it also, are you watching this movie with somebody that likes Resident Evil? Or are you watching this with somebody that gets butthurt over, like, the scenes? Or are you watching this with somebody that has no idea and you get to explain to them what's happening? Like, I like that stuff. Like, I like being able to look over to my wife and she's like, I don't understand what is going on with Alice, or I don't understand what is going on. Why is that guy acting this way? And I'm like, oh, just wait. And I'm sitting there in my little ivory tower, like, I can't wait to cast this lightning bolt. Got her. Like, and then she's like, oh, so that's what it does. And I'm like, yes.
Yeah. And even like the secret knowledge of the elite few to know what's going on with the Resident Evil aspects of this movie. I mean, let's think about like what this movie does do well. And part of that is establish a fun, like, horror movie setup. You've got this survive the night sort of scenario when you've got your main cast locked in the hive, which we'll get more into as we go along here. But they're basically stuck underground trying to get out and figure out the mystery of what happened at the start of the movie, which we'll also get to. And then you also have the main character, Alice, who has some sort of unknown secret about herself that we're also trying to uncover at the same time. So with those two elements right there, we've got a team together, they're the best of the best, but there is ridiculous odds ahead of us, and then we have this wild card who is trying to figure out her past. These are like film elements that just make the horror genre, and really any adventure genre, not adventure, but any genre, enjoyable. A little bit of mystery, a little bit of action. Mm-hmm. I mean, they kind of have a little, like, I don't want to say like romance in the movie, but there's like odd hints here and there. So like it does those things well.
There's some electricity.
Yeah, some spark, if you will.
Yeah.
It's like hitting on people at the bar, you know. Like you're not quite sure where it's going to go, but I mean, there's some good flirtatious things going on.
And it's like watching people get hit at the bar from a distance, which makes it that much more fun.
Oh, he's going to strike out. He's going in. He's been trying all night.
That guy is 2 Jaeger bombs deep, and he thinks he's going to make this work, does he? All right.
I think he peed his pants.
Which is a great segue because, yes, we've talked about the Hive, and the Umbrella Corporation is one of the few things that I feel like, aside from the zombies, actually carries over from the video game series.
Yes.
And so Umbrella, just for folks that don't know about it, they're a nefarious organization. They do a lot of human experimentation, all kinds of nasty shit. And they've got this massive underground facility that they're doing research in, which strikes me as a bad thing to do, but hey, whatever. I'm not a doctor or a scientist. But there's this level of claustrophobia that I have not been able to kick since I turned 30, okay? Don't know why. I used to be much more into exploring spaces that were a little bit tighter. But, Nick, curious to know, what do you think of the Hive? What do you think of its part in this movie? Because the Hive isn't exactly a video game construct. It's an original to the movie.
Yeah, so I'm no carologist, but I think it's a bad idea to have all your super secret stuff about, I saw at one point 2,400 meters down in the Earth's crust. I don't know, but if I was down there, I'm pretty sure that in my head, if I'm working in an area that deep underground, my chances of, if anything goes sideways on me, getting out, 0.
Yeah. Why are you making your office building like a South American like mining operation? Whose idea was this?
I agree. Like I did not. I liked that the Hive offered a good scenario base because if it's out in the open, you know, you get into the old, all right, going down alleyways, build a car, drive it out through everything, you know. But what they did do was create a very tense situation because they gotta go down to get back up. And in the beginning, they don't explain to you the timer. They all just say synchronize watch, and then they all got this clock on them. And you don't figure out what the clock is about until, I don't know, it's all hell has broken loose at this point, and they're like, oh, by the way, we synchronized our watches for XYZ, and they're like, you what? Right.
Yes. Yes.
But I mean, a little bit even before we get we got the team together here, if we could take a step back for just a second and talk about something that Mark and I had actually brought up as well when we talked about Dawn of the Dead and how you get to see the normalcy before the fall, because this is an intriguing part of the film of when you are in the hive and you see like them moving chemicals around, this faced figure who we just don't see just chucks one and then it goes into the air vents, and then you get to see life in this operation where you've got video screens that make it look like they're in like a skyscraper. You've got the stuff over here, and it appears to be a regular office building before all heck breaks loose. And this is the first question I'd like to pose to both of you guys. When things do go down and they seal the building and they seal rooms, and we've got it very much in the heads of all these people who, if you think any of them are going to be main characters that you should get attached to, change your mind immediately. Because none of them make it out of there alive. And I got to say, gents, what do you think in that opening scenario was the worst way for anyone to go out? Because it...
Oh, I've got mine hands down.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, my number one, like, the scene that got to me was, like, not the gas releasing the halon, because I had explained that to my wife on what that was. But when the dude picks up the fire axe and he turns it around to use the pick side, and I'm just watching it because I've seen this movie a bunch of different times, and I'm watching my wife's reaction, and that thing hits the wall and the tiniest pebble comes out of the glass, and she just goes like this. And I was like, that's when you know it's over. Like that moment right there. That was the worst one to me.
So I was going to mention that one just because of the fact that like their part of that office is like the one that water was flooding into.
Yes.
Nobody else had water flooding into their scenario, and most people are like, yeah, drowning is going to be like one of the worst ways to go, other than like being eaten by a shark or something.
Yep.
So yes, that for me, that imagery of that little speck of glass coming off of that wall, you're just like, oh shit. Yeah. Okay. I kind of wish my desk was like really close to the train now, but for me, it's gotta be the elevator. It's gotta be the
God,
the elevator.
Elevator guillotine is pretty awful.
Well, it's not just because it's a guillotine. It's the fact that it lowers, and she's like, okay, I can get out now. And then it's like, wait, nope, there's more. Just like a Billy Mays ad. It's like, nope, boom. This thing just goes shooting straight up, and then it's like, yep, okay. The despair has been locked in. Okay.
Even if she thought she could honestly make it through that, it's like, unless you're a cat and you don't have a true collarbone, you're not making it out of that hole. Like, I don't know what you were thinking. Like, holy crap.
Now, Joe, I'll pose the question back to you. How about you? Which one moment was yours?
I was on the same page as you with the fire axe, and then like the room is flooding. Like, no, this is a sealed room, and they're just like the water's not going anywhere. And again, like the guy's like, oh fuck this, we'll take the axe, and then it does nothing. And like, well, that's the sharpest thing, the thing that can do the most damage in this room. So I guess we're just gonna die.
Yeah, and the kicker is the scene later on in the movie where it has now. Is it okay to talk about this scene?
Oh, yeah.
We're not too far. Okay.
Absolutely.
When they get to the part in there where they come across the room's full of water, and you can see that they tried 5 or 6 more times to smash that glass, and it's just the tiniest 5 or 6 streams coming out of that wall, and I was just like, that right there, like, sealed it for me, like the desperation that they were going through.
Yep.
Now, we love to say stuff to watch for on this program. Now, when it comes to that character, the guy swinging the axe, he kind of looks like the standard porn doctor that's in everything, right? He's the bald-headed dude. But one thing to watch out for with that specific actor is he does show up again later holding the axe.
Yep.
And that actor was able to dislocate his ankle.
Jesus.
To sell
I didn't
the
know
scene.
that.
Wow.
Okay, because yes, I remember him later on in the movie with the dislocated ankle.
Yeah.
And I didn't know he was able to do that.
That was his superpower. The next time you see that twisted ankle, just kind of like 90-degreeing it, dude could dislocate his friggin' foot. And it's like,
whoa, okay, I did not know that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, imagine that interview process. It's like, so what can you do? And like most people just like tie their shirt up and through and they start jiggling a little bit. No, this guy's like, hey, hold on a second. And then like, boom, the foot just pops out.
Get this guy on screen.
Yeah. You're our guy. You're our guy.
Yep. They actually planned for a more like involved like character, but when they found out he actually couldn't act, like, all right, all you got to do is say fuck this, and then you do the ankle thing. That's all you have to do.
Yeah.
You're just a foot guy now. Okay, that's all you're doing. Feet are going to be real big in the future, guys. Okay, let's just go.
yeah, only feet.
Oh.
So this was actually something I missed the first time I watched this movie. And it was the fact that AI is driving almost everything in this facility, which nowadays it's like, yeah, AI is driving how I pee now. Like back then, though, we weren't really talking about AI. It was just this like flashy thing that maybe a guy with a pocket protector might bring up every now and again. But literally, AI drove what happened after the T-virus gets unleashed in this facility.
Yes.
And the concept of just like wiping out everybody with the hope that we've sealed it up and we're good to go didn't quite work out. But yeah.
Almost. So really close.
It got real close. But yeah.
And zero emotion. Like there's no integral critical thinking of like how this would affect a person. It's just like, this is the best way to do this because I can't allow this. My protocols say I can't allow anyone out. Boom, shut down.
Yeah. I don't know how I missed that the first time. Did you guys miss it, or did you actually catch that detail?
I caught it. Yes, I caught it because in my head, I was just like, this is how I see computers. Like, I just remember being like, a computer wouldn't have feelings. Like, if it's an AI system and it's there to protect, the militaristic, virus or whatever, or whatever kind of goods are in there, no one's getting out. It's going to keep everything shut up.
Yeah.
I remember being terrified.
Well, and Joe and I have talked about this before. We're like, yeah, we miss things the first viewing or whatever. And over the years, when I rewatched it, I was like, holy shit. Like, yeah, that robotic thinking would be the way to go. And and even now, like when I watched it again, just as my research for this, I just went, man, that is some cold-blooded stuff, and I love it. It's fantastic. It's
one thing that is not hard to miss, though, with the AI in this, that you will remember, no matter when you watched it, is the actual CGI representation of the AI, because that wasn't good then, and it also doesn't hold up now. So
no, it does not. This the CG does not hold up in this movie in any way.
I feel like they tried doing this weird thing where they tried using like actually a computer generated version of an actual like young girl, and then they tried using the young girl at the same time, and that they tried like melding those images together, and you get something that is remarkably worse than if you just gone one of the other ways.
Yeah, it's like instead of using peanut butter and jelly separately, you just mix it together and then hope people can figure out what that is. And it's like, not really. For me, like I was looking at it and it almost felt like a video game where it was translated in Japanese and English, and the mouth doesn't quite work.
Right?
It kind of felt like that, but at the same time, that's where I also look at this movie and go, when they need to do practical things in this movie, they knocked it out of the park. But when they had to do anything computer driven, you're just like, yeah, use the image blur on that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yikes.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely. You guys both like hit it on the nail on the head. It's just the fact that when it came to the actors weren't bad. I can't think of anyone that didn't play their part well in the movie. And when it came to the CGI, you were left wanting. Even, the liquor. The thing that got me was the liquor was, the CG was no bueno, but they even tried to, instead of doing the old, let's doctor their faces, the zombies, they tried to CGI the faces of the zombies, and it looked like a patch that had been this much farther removed, and it just didn't even match to their faces. And that had me left wanting when I rewatched the movie.
It was much more noticeable now because when I saw it the first time, very similar to actually how I looked at Dawn of the Dead. There were some sequences that scared the piss out of me, and seeing the axe zombie with that foot just dangling there, that stuck with me for several weeks the first time I saw this. But yeah, then suddenly they zoom in on someone's face and like there's an eye that's like weird looking and kind of grayish.
Yes.
But the rest of the face looks fine. And it's
right.
It's like, guys, come on.
Yeah.
What was your reference photo for this? Like, come on. Nowadays, it definitely takes me out of it. But the one thing that I think I looked at a little bit differently now, though, was presenting this movie through the eyes of this amnesia arc and introducing Alice, who is a brand new character. She didn't exist in the games, and using that vessel as kind of a way to do like I don't know, maybe a reboot or helping everybody see her for the first time, right? And Nick, what was your thought on I guess the original character of Alice and then this amnesia route that we kind of go down?
So, if I remember correctly, there wasn't Alice in the games. It was Resident Evil 0, which was a preamble way back to where they used the train in that game. But the Alices don't match up. Like, that Alice in the game was a medic, and she was, it just didn't match up. But the Mila amnesia arc, I actually kind of enjoyed because as a Resident Evil person that played the games, this was brand new to me. And I was it had me kind of like going, okay, like I don't mind this. All right. So, and then you get the little flashbacks throughout the movie, and then you find out about the husband, he's got amnesia. Then you find out the guy that says he's a cop, but he ends up not being a cop, and the whole family dynamic. All that I liked it because it wasn't it made it a different Resident Evil, if that makes sense. And to me, as a person that had played the games, there was no Claire, there was no Chris, and you were like, okay, I'm in. I'm along for this ride. I'll take the train, choo choo. Let's go. Let's see where we're going with this. I didn't mind it, and I know some people were like, the critics were like, this is not a good, anything, yada, yada. And I know that some of the people that were so hardcore Resident Evil truthers didn't care for Alice either.
Which is odd to me because I remember actually being in the same kind of boat you were where, I had some exposure to the games, but as opposed to the Final Fantasy movie that had nothing really to do with anything from the games at all. And I'm not just talking plot. I don't even references. It was just on its own thing. This one, at least, the T-virus exists in the games. Umbrella is there. We know they're not good people. All that good stuff. But the character of Alice, I thought was great because, as you mentioned, her acting is really solid, especially for a video game.
Agreed.
Yeah. Her acting is great, and I was fine with having a brand new character to kind of focus on because the mystery side of it, I think, is what really pulled me in. And I love movies that can sell you a mystery, and the horror backdrop was just a plus for me. But I mean, Joe, what did you think?
Agreed.
Yeah, I 100%. Like when I said before that these are elements that can make any movie great, I think is why this relatively unheard of film company went with that decision. Was like, hey, let's just try and make a good movie and just involve elements from the video game in that to kind of pull in that audience. So I agreed. Like, I liked the outlandish 2000s action that Alice pulled off every once in a while, which was a surprise to the audience and herself when she did it. It was very much a moment where, had other audiences been watching, someone would be like,
Jesus Christ, that's Jason Bourne.
And I was thinking, I was thinking of the Matrix. I know kung fu. Like that's what I was thinking when you said that. Like, oh my God, look at me! Look what I can do.
So yeah, like that just it's an element that like you're not expecting, and it makes it fun on top of everything else that's going on in the movie. So again, that's what I enjoyed in the movie. Now, as far as like things that may not have been great, I think we talked about the biggest part with me was definitely the CGI that would take you out of it if you focused on it too much. But again, like I feel like by and large, you can get around that. Like I think like even like all the scenes with the dogs and the zombie dogs, that stuff looks pretty good. And there's a little bit of there's those scenes have a great element of like horror and a little bit of comedy to them that make them work great.
They also have the very dubious distinction of mimicking the cinematics from the very first Resident Evil. And Nick, I'm not sure if you remember this part, but in the original cinematic for Resident Evil 1, there's the sequence where they have the dogs attack, and you see this like sock puppet thing.
Yep.
At the screen, and this awful blood mechanic, and they paid homage to that with these dog sequences where they show the dogs coming at the camera, and I just couldn't help but think of that.
Now because you're bringing up the video game, I gotta ask you. Okay, so when you get inside the mansion of the video game, did you ever check the door again?
Actually, no.
Oh,
I don't think I ever did.
Oh, you're missing an Easter egg. Okay, so in the game, when you go in, and this was in the PlayStation one, if I remember correctly, this was in the PlayStation as well, like the very OG one. If you go back to the door, it's like, oh, I shouldn't go back out there. All right. But then you go to the door again, it opens the door. And if you open the door, a dog rushes in and gets into the very beginning of the mansion room while you're in there.
Well, fuck that.
Wow. And you have a fight that fast. And it's like, you're not prepared. It's you. And well, depending on who you're with, it could be, it just depends on which character you pick. But yes, a dog rushes through at the very beginning. And not a whole lot of people end up knowing that.
I was too scared shitless playing the game to care about trying to go back out the door.
I wanted to, as the kids say, F around and find out. I was like, let's see what this door does.
Dude, I lost sleep over the part where you walk in and you see one of the zombies eating for the first time.
Oh, that is so iconic. Yes.
It's white head just turning around. I still can't. I
ran back in the room and let Barry take care of it because I always played Jill. I was like, I'll see ya. And I walk in, they're like, she's all like, Barry, there's something behind me. And he's like, stand back, Jill. Boom, boom, boom.
Yeah. Oh, I'll let you do it. It's like having your wife ask you to kill a spider. You know, it's like, no, this is part of the gig.
Well, for me, it was item management. I was like, I want to hold on to as many bullets as I can. I was like, Barry, you have unlimited bullets. Have at them.
Dude, and what's unfortunate is that you didn't have a strike team at your disposal like what we had in this movie. Because
they did.
That is just into like a far more like, I don't know, expansive cast of characters than what you're used to in a Resident Evil game, and especially the early ones where you said you can pick between two people. So like we get a strike team here, plus because someone thought it was a great idea, some regular civilians. Come on down, everyone.
We're all holding hands. Kumbaya, let's go to the train.
The power of friendship will lead us through.
Yeah. Yes, it was not about the zombies, but the friends we made along the way, guys. That's really what this was about.
That's right.
Because that's the one thing that, like, even back then when I first saw it, I was like going, why would a strike team bring along people that are immediately just going to cost them time and effort to keep alive? It just didn't make any sense to me to do that. And it's like, do you guys actually have any military experience, or is this like a part-time gig for you? Right? Like, are you just elevated mall cops or something? I don't know.
Right. Well, and the one guy they cuff, but they leave Alice uncuffed. She's the more dangerous one. Turns out.
Well, I mean, she's not wearing a bra. How much damage can she really do at that point? Maybe that's what they were thinking. I don't know, but it is a weird thing to think about, because this strike team, as quote unquote elite as they might be, frankly, they do get reduced fairly quickly.
Yep.
And this is the part where I think a lot of people can remember, is that little corridor with the laser sequence.
Yes.
Nick, you're smiling, which I love. What is your takeaway from this sequence?
Okay, so this is one of my, like, this to me is one of the best scenes in the whole movie, because you don't really get what's going on. They've pretty much gone through this whole thing, and I think the dining hall is before, and that's when you know things are up. So in their little wrist computers, beep boop pop, and they're sitting there, and they're like, "This is not the dining hall." And then the guy in handcuffs is like, "Well, if you thought maybe they haven't told you everything that's going on here," well, then they split the team up, and some of them go down the hallway, and they get this hallway, and you're just looking down, and it's just one big old bank vault door at the other end, and you're like, And I remember my wife saying, she's like, "I don't know, but I'm not going down that hallway."
No.
And I was like, I was just like, watch this. And I remember the first part, and I'm like, okay, all right. And I remember watching this for the very first time. You're like, okay, all right, stage one, easy. Yeah. No one should have died, but you did, so okay. And then stage two, you're like, oh, the lasers move. Okay, well, no big deal. Mm-hmm. And then you get to the dude that does calisthenics for 13 hours a day, and you just watch him up and over this thing, and you're like, this dude's gonna probably make it. And then he's standing there, and then the last laser scene, and you're like, uh-oh.
And done from the lattice. What are we gonna do?
And I couldn't help it to think, but if he'd have been 2 feet back, he'd have made it.
I know.
If he'd have just been against that door, he'd have made it. And just,
God, it's
rip.
The part for me though, like you just mentioned, like how rapid fire all these lasers are going, right?
Yes.
But even in between that, there's a part where the first guy gets half of his hand cut off.
Yes.
And the dude's trying to calm him down and going like, "Oh, you're going into shock, keep breathing." And like through all this pandemonium, it's like, oh my God, this is literally like, putting 4 cats in a bag and just hearing what happens.
You're right.
Oh, it was so nerve-wracking. Even watching it again, years later, you're like, oh my God, this is just pandemonium. And then they cut to everybody else who has to watch it happen.
Yep.
At the same time. So, once again, if we're talking about movies that take steps forward and steps back, this is a part of a movie that took like a leap forward,
Agreed.
For time. And it's easily one of my favorite scenes from the whole
yes.
thing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's got action, it's got anxiety, it's got fear, it's got everything you want out of a zombie movie that is also somehow like, I was going to say like science, like a sci-fi, like thrilling romp at the same time.
Yeah.
So it is a very fun spin on something that is like, an older idea like zombies. So having that tech part of just like the viral part going on. So no, I thought it was, one of the best scenes of the movie, hands down, if not the best.
Yes.
Isn't it? It's crazy though. It gives you something to be afraid of that's not the zombies, which is kind of interesting. That the AI who, tried to systemically kill everybody in the hive is now trying to keep you from going anywhere, and so that to me is what I think made this claustrophobic feel even more claustrophobic. Was this concept? The AI's got you back against the wall too, but. Folks, the other part of this that we've kind of alluded to a little bit is how, as we go throughout this film, almost like going through the levels of a video game, we're getting breadcrumbs. People are starting to figure this stuff out. There's something else going on here, as you mentioned, Nick. So for me, it was like we've got some sci-fi elements, as you mentioned. We've got the horror, but now we've got this like corporate espionage thing that we've got going on here. And do we think it was a bit overloaded for this movie to have this many themes? I'll open it up.
You mean like the double, triple, quadruple agent?
Yeah.
Yeah, I personally do. Like, I could have done with it just being... I like that it was Alice and the husband, right? I like that idea that they were double agents, but I also like the fact that they were played against each other, and he was actually spying on her. I like that, But where the brother comes in, I could have done without. However, if I'm got to pick people that I like the most out of the movie, I actually like the brother as one of my favorite characters in the entire movie, other than Mila.
Yeah. Yeah. Who is Eric Mabius, who
Yes,
a lot of folks may not recognize at all. But like, I did love that character too, because he actually felt maybe the most grounded out of all of them.
yes.
He's not like a superhero, but he's also not a smarmy bad guy that, frankly, James Purefoy, I think, is just meant to play that kind of greasy character, because
Yep.
you don't
yeah.
you don't trust him at all. I mean, I didn't, at least. I mean, the only movie I've ever trusted him in was A Knight's Tale, and you kind of have to, because I mean, he's a good guy in that one. But I thought that's, like, if we're talking about balance here, the brother is like the good side of it. Mia's kind of like the neutral side, and then Purefoy is like the full-on, like, just bad dude, right?
Yeah.
And so the three of them kind of together with Amnesia, we've got the neutral good kind of thing going on.
Yeah.
Right. But then it stretches out into, all right, pick your team. Who do you want to go with? You know, so,
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Do you want to go with the greasy, obviously likely bad guy, the like super powered hottie with all crazy sorts of skill, or the man who has just the right amount of style to his hair that says like bedhead and don't care, but you can tell he put effort into making it look that way, so he does give a shit. Yeah,
Hey, he's
which
got the
one you
gym
going
muscles too. Yeah, he's got the gym. He's got the
works
gym
out.
muscles. Dude definitely benches, 405 for a few reps. He can get it up there with those shoulders and that upper body. You can tell he works out later on in the movie. You're like, shirt came off. Dude works out.
He's not just doing the circuits, man. He's actually using free weights, okay?
Yeah,
Yeah.
He's over there with dumbbells and plates, putting them on. He's in there.
God, I didn't think we were going to go that route, but so here's one thing I wanted to bring up, because this came up 20 years ago. It came up 15 years ago, 10 years ago. What did we think about the fact that it seems like nobody in this film recognizes zombie mechanics at all?
Oh my God, dude.
It blows my mind. Yeah,
I don't get it either.
It's like, oh yeah,
If you're
like,
elite, right? Why aren't you
Yeah.
taking headshots? Like elite, like when I think elite, it's headshots, and that's all we're doing. Unless we're trying to take someone to question them. Like, okay, the scene where they're in the dining room, right? Okay, they're in the dining room, and dude takes one, puts it in her thigh, and she like kind of goes down, looks at it, and then she's like, bah. That's the moment. Like, we now have confirmation that doesn't work. It's headshots from here on in, boys. Like, that's it.
Yeah,
I don't get
exactly.
that.
I don't either, because like you said, like there's like the part where like they had to split up, and Michelle Rodriguez inevitably ends up getting bit in that scene. But like they're like firing warning shots into legs. Like these people, like they've got blood gushing from their mouths. They're just like they're like walking sleep apnea and still able to do things. And no one's like, hey, this is a zombie. Well, it's like, are zombies like a just complete like unknown thing in the movie? Like there's never been that concept before. Never a Romero movie, never anything before this. No one's ever had an inkling of what a zombie could be, and that you shoot them in the head. Because like, I can get like maybe like strike team, 1 to the head, 2 to the chest, like you go for that first, like sort of thing. And then when you realize like that's not doing anything, it's like, okay, boys, go for the head. Like we gotta figure that out quickly.
Yes.
Yeah. Instead, though, it's like, ma'am. Jesus Christ, guys! I've said,
my
ma'am.
God.
She's not okay. I said, ma'am, again. It's like,
makes me
seriously,
think the Key and Peele sketch where like,
Yes.
hey, you better not get in that car. You better stop right there. Oh, you better not buckle up. You better get back. Don't you start that car. Don't you drive away. Like, that's what they're doing the whole time.
Or when they like, okay, what got me was, okay, we haven't figured out, we shoot them in the head. I'll give it a pass. But when you unload half a magazine into the body and it just keeps walking, it's time to just shoot anywhere else.
Yes.
Shoot anywhere else. I don't care. But not in the same spot for half a mag. Please stop.
yeah.
I mean, Yeah. You gotta rush up and try the Wolfman's Got Nards tactic from Monster Squad. Do something different here.
Yeah. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
But even in The Walking Dead, when like season 2, and Shane's trying to show to other people like these things are clearly not human, and he shoots one in the knee, and then he shoots him in the heart, and he's like you see that, you shoot him, and they keep moving.
Yes.
And I'm like going, yeah. To your point, if these are elite strike force people, yes, they are shooting to kill. They're going to acquire the assets, and they're out of there. You know, like it was like one of the biggest shortfalls of this movie for me. And I'm happy you guys agree, because we were talking about this, like I said, over 20 years ago. We're like, how have these people never once heard of a zombie or, you know, anything like this? But if there was another thing that I feel like should be picked apart a little bit, did we focus on the right, like, bad guys from Resident Evil? Because the liquor
that was not the one.
Yeah,
right. That was not the one. Like, as I believe the kids also say, that's not he ain't him. Like, that he ain't him. Like you needed a bigger bad. Like that's all you needed, a bigger bad. And the liquor, as treacherous as they were super easy to get around as long as you didn't make noise in the games. As long as you didn't run and toe tap and stuff like that. If you could do the shuffle move if you were a little bit more veteran in the game and get down the hallway pretty quick, or you could just slow walk. But the liquor, I did like their take where as soon as it got a taste of someone else's DNA, it mutated. That's where I got it. I was like, okay, I'm back in.
Right there. Yep.
I'm out. I'm back in.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like you could have had the liquor be the big bad, but like, why not have it like, you know, hunt the elite team throughout the movie, start picking some things off, and it keeps changing along the way and getting harder to the point where it's like, well, fuck this thing. It went from being, you know, just like some thug ruffian on a corner. Now it's the fucking Cthulhu at the end. Like, what's going on?
Right.
Like, why not have the stake be a little higher?
And that was this thing that I was wondering too, is like in the games, when you would fight bosses, you didn't always beat the boss. You just survived the boss, right?
Yeah.
And you went through what Joe kind of talked about. You go through different versions of that boss. But the whole point was you're like off center every single time you play them, right? Yep. And so that's what I kind of thought about. I also thought about the fact that if they're experimenting on things in there, we get why the zombies are there, right? The virus is in the filtration system and everybody's got it. But I was like really hoping that they would have busted open more than just the liquors. Like I really wanted to see like some of the abominations and just there's got to be other things that could be more menacing.
I really wanted to see the hunter. That was one of them. I really wanted to see like pop out or something like that. I was glad the dogs made it though. I mean, the dogs were a huge part. No huge spiders, which hey, for me, thank you. Like I'm not that guy. I don't like the tarantulas and stuff. I remember those in the game, and I was like, why has it got to be spiders? But there was no giant snake, and you didn't. Unless at the very end, unless you had played the games, you didn't know what was happening in the very last scene.
Yeah.
Well, I was kind of hoping to have that, like, you know, like main boss side eye moment where like you're out of gear, you're low on health, and then you think you're about to go like win the game because you beat the boss, and then suddenly like you're walking away, and then the music changes, and you're just like,
what? Or you go to use the door and it goes to a cutscene and you're like, I knew it!
Shit.
I knew it! I got 3 bullets left in this gun!
Oh, not again.
Or you walk into a room and you're like, why is there all this health and why is there all this ammo? I guess they must have just left it in the game for me.
Yeah,
Nothing bad could happen here, right?
It's like the Uncharted moment where it's like, I wonder what all these crates are for and why there's all these different levels, you know, of things stacked on each other. This is just going to be a nice little jaunt walking through here.
Like a victory lap, really. Like, I've gotten this far in the game. Right. Now they'll give me everything I need. Next thing I know, I've used all of that, and the boss is getting back up and it's saying, I didn't hear no bell. And it's ready to go again.
That's a good one. I like that.
Yeah, touch me and I'll sue. You know, so you know what though, Nick, this is what the moment that we would normally talk about a property's lasting legacy. And since you so graciously joined us, we would love to hear your thoughts on what you think the legacy of this film is, especially given how it kind of had a rough go at first. I mean, what are your thoughts now?
It did, but like how you mentioned earlier, I mean, this thing cleared a ton of money. I mean, it made three times as much as it actually, like, what was it, it was budgeted. And so here's the thing. This movie was just the base level. Like, this movie, I don't care what rating this got, this movie made people want more. People wanted more of the Resident Evil, and they did. I think they made a total of 5, if I'm correct. Is it 5 Resident Evils? 6.
Yeah.
6? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so 6. So they made 6 movies in total, 5 after the base one. You can't tell me that this wasn't the beginnings of what Fast and Furious was.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, right? Hot take. Yeah. But this was this was the OG of Fast and Furious, and people want more. And it doesn't matter what avenue you put them in. Like, this is a legacy movie. I mean, this movie did for video games movies what you wanted. I mean, it did.
Yeah, I would say just even for like a franchise in general, it did what you needed to do. Now, were there things that we would have maybe changed in that first film? Yeah, totally.
Right.
But for the threads that they started to kind of plant there, I absolutely loved. And for one other thing, stuff to watch out for. Do you guys know Jason Isaacs by name? I'm sure most folks know him from The Patriot. Obviously, he was in the Harry Potter films. He's actually in this movie, and he plays a doctor that is actually like working on Alice in the very end of the film. He's also narrating in the very beginning of the film too, and they were concerned that they hadn't actually paid him for this movie based on this. But the whole point I was going to make was he's part of the whole concept of Alice being almost like this renewable resource for the Umbrella Corporation, which is a small piece of that first movie that carries us through the whole rest of the franchise.
Yes.
And so, like, to get that breadcrumb in the beginning, yeah, we kind of talked it up to just being, basically nude for hours on end, being shot at. But seriously, like, that was like a major breadcrumb that you didn't really know in the first movie. Yep. And it becomes a huge part of the whole thing. So, yeah, I think they did just enough, be honest with you, in the first movie.
If I could add one more thing, like, and this was when I knew there would be a sequel. At the very end, in my head, I was screaming it inside my own skull. I was like, if we don't see Wesker walk by this glass, I'm going to come unglued. Like, I just remember thinking I'm gonna come unglued if I don't see that blonde hair and those black glasses and that dude walk by. I'm gonna have a riot in my hands. And that dude walks by the glass and I went, sold. I was like, I'll be seeing the next one. That's all I had to have that at the end, though. Had to. And they paid homage to it.
Yeah, and if you were hoping for more, that is sadly where we're going to kind of cut things off for today, and maybe we'll come back again for the rest of this franchise. But until then, we would like to really thank you for listening to Digital Dissection and continuing to listen to our podcast, because we always appreciate everything that our dissection crew does for us day in and day out. Your support really does go a long way with our podcast and with all of our other digital endeavors as well. So while you are, listening to this episode, if you could go ahead, like us, subscribe, maybe leave a comment or review wherever you're checking the show out.
Yeah, and before we wrap up, Mr. Daily Dad, how can folks find you?
You can find me on Twitch at the Daily Dad. I have a YouTube. I wouldn't go there because that's not really too active. But I do have a TikTok that is at the Daily Dad as well. And anywhere that you type in the Daily Dad, I've Googled it, it pops up.
Awesome. Yeah, we love it, man. Well, hey, you know what, folks? As Joe mentioned, your support does go a long way, and we absolutely love hearing from you. So feel free to message us over at digitaldissectionpodcast@gmail.com. We welcome your ideas for future shows and anything tasteful you would like to discuss.
And by the way, and until next time, keep on dissecting.